Everyone. I welcome all of you to the Association of Indian Research Scholars third e-lecture by Professor Afroz Alam on making sense of Bihar Assembly elections. We have successfully completed with your support two e-lectures, that is Post-COVID World Order by Professor Muhammad Mauzam Ali and The Perfect Storm, The Rise and Fall of United Progressive Alliance by Professor Zoya Hassan. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. I am Ariba Ahsanat Mauzam, Senior Research Scholar, Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad. We will get to the presentation shortly, but before that, let me remind all the participants to switch their videos off for better streaming. Also use the chat box only to share questions for the speaker along with your designation and affiliations. Now, I would like to request Zeba Tamkanet Mauzam, Vice President of AIS, to walk us through the inception of Association of Indian Research Scholars. Over to you, Zeba.
Thank you, Ariba. Okay. Association of Indian Research Scholars, also known as AIRS, is the brainchild of Ariba Ahsanat, the president of this association. It was created to bring together like-minded, intellectually inclined, and enthusiastic research scholars of our generation and to collectively increase our knowledge base, while also interacting with the best minds in the world. To this end, we have garnered the support of some of the best in their field, including Professor Muhammad Mauzam Ali, Professor and former HOD, Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad, Professor Zoya Hassan, Professor Emerita, Center for Political Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru, Professor Alfredo Toro Hardy, retired Venezuelan diplomat, scholar, professor, and public intellectual, Dr. Aparna Devare, Assistant Professor at the University of Hyderabad, Professor Rajan Harshe, Professor of Political Science and the former Vice Chancellor of Allahabad Central University, and many scholars from across the world, including Nuno Rodriguez, Director, Quixote Global from Madrid, Spain, Paul Szymanski from Space Strategy Center, Carnegie Mellon University, New Mexico, USA. The aim of an association like AIRS is to not only provide a platform for young scholars to connect with experts, but also to have intellectually stimulating and interactive sessions with them. In order to make this happen, we aim to host webinars, e-lectures, seminars, talks, book discussions, and distinguished lectures. In the future, we will also intend to expand towards doing conferences, seminars, symposiums, and book discussion panels. Through these mediums, AIRS intends to promote a seamless and harmonious interaction and engagement between the social sciences and humanities communities in the country. It also aspires to bring together people to hold discussions, debates, and conversations on theory, research methodology, research ethics, research practices, and methods to expand the research community and to bring everyone within one ambit. The future of AIRS holds dynamic experiences. We intend to bring the Indian community closer to the international community, not only through lectures and seminars, but also through publications. AIRS intends to focus on the most relevant issues in the world and the various pressing scenarios on the national and international scene. Following AIRS will help you stay on the top of not only current affairs, and get an in-depth analysis of burning topics, but it will also give you the opportunity to expand your knowledge base through the diversity of our events. You can follow AIRS on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Telegram. You can also follow us on our site, airs.org.in. Thank you, and over to you, Ariba.
Thanks a lot, Zeba, for that lucid introduction. I now request Sai Kamoraju Amulia, Senior Research Scholar, Department of Communications, SN School, University of Hyderabad, to introduce our eminent speaker. Over to you, Amulia.
Hi, thank you, Ariba. Good morning, everyone. We are pleased to have with us Dr. Afroz Alam. Dr. Afroz Alam is currently working as Professor and Head, Department of Political Science at Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad. He is also the Director of Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, Manu, Hyderabad. He received his doctoral degree from Aligarh Muslim University and has authored over 30 research articles and 4 books. His forthcoming book, a Routledge publication, is titled In the Name of Muslims, Religion and Politics in North India. He regularly writes opinion pieces in reputed and widely read newspapers like Deccan Herald, The Tribune, New Indian Express, Times of India, The Statesman, Asian Age, to name a few. He has worked with Lokniti CSDS New Delhi and supervised many national election studies in UP. He has previously held positions in Aligarh Muslim University, KIIT Law School, and National Law University, Odisha. He has also served as the Registrar of NLUO and the Director of Public Policy and Governance, Cuttack. Thank you so much for being with us here, sir. Over to you, Ariba.
Thanks, Amulya, for that brief introduction. I now invite Professor Afroz Alam to share with us his astute insights on the topic. Over to you, sir.
Very good morning. First, because of the technical glitches, let me ask you, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Fine, so no problem with audio. Let me tell you first that I was not knowing that something called Association of Indian Research Scholars are in existence. Something like I always wished that there must be a platform where research scholars should be able to develop some sort of bond, some sort of mutual grow togetherness. So this was the platform when I heard Ariba's asking to speak on some topics from the platform of Association of Indian Research Scholars. I was also interested in exploring that what this association is all about. But anyways, I know now there is an introduction by Zeba, and I am able to make out that something is there, something is happening. And 3 lectures we have already conducted. It's a grow. It's simply a very good effort, and you are promoting an academic spirit among the research scholars, nothing like it. So thank you, Ariba, for asking me to be a speaker from this platform. And see, because why to discuss Bihar elections, and because it is a hot topic these days, and it is going to face elections. I can see lots of known faces who are already working in the electoral politics area. So fine, because it may enrich the whole debate and discussions. My whole discussion of Bihar is going to be divided into 2 parts. One is that I'll be focusing on the academic aspects. Second one is adding with certain empirics. So analyzing the past, and then I'll be focusing on what is the probabilities in 2020. So because understanding the present is more relevant for many of us in the backdrop of what has happened in the past. Fine, we can see that Bihar is a state which has given many political lessons to the national politics. So one has to learn politics, one has to learn Bihar. So this is what the whole things happens. We have already seen that if I'll be looking back at Bihar, so starting with the early days to till today, let us divide this whole phase into 4 phases. And I'll not be delving deep into it because it will consume lots of time, because so many nuances are involved into the past. We cannot explain and explore everything in just 1 hour. So the one is, you can see that there is a phase 1950s to still 67. That Bihar, like many other states, like national politics as well, was phase what Rajni Kothari says, that it is a Congress system. So the first phase, that the hegemonic presence of the Congress was very much established in Bihar, and till 67, no political party was in a position to challenge the Congress system, Congress dominance in Bihar. And it was not only the Congress dominance, it was equally the dominance of the upper caste, higher caste in Bihar politics. So the first phase in Bihar was known for the perpetuation and dominance of the Congress party under the banner of the higher caste leadership. It was actually the higher caste people, Brahman, Baniya, Bhumihar, Kayas, they were dominating the entire political scene of the Bihar. Then 1967 to 1990, we have seen a transitional period of in Bihar politics where the Congress was graduating back to 0-1 because the weakening of the Congress system started taking place after 1967. Similarly, it is not only the weakening of the Congress, but also the weakening of the higher caste presence. During this period of time, the middle caste and middle class emerged to the scene, and they started asserting their political position. So a lot of things has happened during this period. So till from that is early phase to till 1990, in the entire politics, means the pre Mandal politics in Bihar was actually the dominance of the Congress, which started gradually declining after that is late 60s and early 70s. But post 90 politics was quite happening in Bihar. It is for the first time that the Bihar entered into the third phase where there is a revival of not revival, in fact, resurgence of OBC politics, the lower caste politics. Lots of the lower caste political parties emerged to the scene, and not only that, lower caste based political parties. Similarly, that there were new regional leaders started emerging to the forefront. So Congress was almost decimated, and the new system, a system of social justice representing the lower caste interest in the political arena of Bihar took place. And 1990, we have already seen that it was a period when Indian national politics also experienced a greater shift. It was a period when Janata Dal, under the leadership of Vishwanath Pratap Singh, leading a movement. And then immediately after that is 1989 elections, Bihar faced 1990 election. And 1990 election, Janata Dal, under the leadership of Lalu Prasad Yadav, completely wiped out the Congress from the scene of the Congress. Not only that, then we have seen that is 1995 elections. 1995 elections also marked a different shift. There was a dent in the OBC politics, the lower caste politics in the Bihar. So Bihar experienced that politics of one OBC with another OBC, the OBC versus OBC politics. We have seen that Nitish Kumar getting alienated from the Janata Dal, forming his own party and building his own base in Koiris and Gurmis, simply saying that another dominant OBC class started emerging to the scene. Similarly, that we have already seen that the 1990 when Lalu Prasad Yadav tried to form an umbrella, that is the social umbrella, where he was trying to just make it call to almost all OBCs, particularly that Yadav. But 1995 elections seen that no, that the OBC's call is exclusively giving more and higher representation to the Yadavs, one dominant Yadav community in Bihar, and that is lots of nuances are involved. We will be discussing later on. So the idea is 1990 election, that immediately after that is it was a phase when Mandal mobilization was taking place. Through Mandal mobilization, lots of lower castes started getting voice, representation, political articulation. So therefore, Bihar witnessed the first of its kind politics where the social justice platform was redefined from the angle of the lower caste principles. So then we have seen that 1995 OBC versus that is OBC, that there is a dent in the lower caste base, but despite everything, that is Janata Dal, Lalu Prasad Yadav ji maintained its its rule, and in 1995 elections, when which happened, the Lalu won the election, then he started got the another term. Similarly, not only that, the in 1996 once happened that Bharatiya Janata Party, which was trying to carve its own position in Bihar politics, and they strongly wanted an ally from the Bihar. And 1996 was the period when BJP got the ally in the shape of uh, Nitish Kumar joining hand with BJP. So from the 1996 onwards, with a minor breakup in the past, with very short period of breakup, Nitish has always been an ally of the BJP. So it was a natural ally, in fact, because there was an arch rivalry of Nitish with Lalu, and neither dominant OBC caste, Koiris and Kurmis were asserting against the Yadav's dominance at the local level. So they got an ally with the higher caste-based political party that is called BJP. So from 1996 onward, Nitish Kumar joined hands, and then 2000 elections happened, and in 2000 again, despite the alliance of Nitish with of the BJP, then uh, the party did not well. Again, Lalu Prasad came into picture, and then happened 2005 election. That is another shift uh, in the in Bihar politics. And that 2005, we have seen lots of political parties on the scene. And we have seen that Lojapa into the existence. We have seen that that 2005, we have seen for the first time BJP and the Nitish Kumar alliance gaining power in Bihar. But that again, there was some sort of the uncertainties in Bihar that and Bihar witnessed the final the two elections in 2005 February and October. Finally, that Nitish Kumar was sworn in as CM after October 2005 elections. Then after that, so we have seen that another 2000 period, and from 2014 onwards, there is a saffron system. A saffron system started taking roots in Bihar politics, and we have seen that the number of the kind of the BJP's presence in Bihar, a single largest party, having 24.4% of votes in Bihar. It's quite a larger base. So we have seen that 2015 elections in which BJP has emerged on its scene. In 2014 elections, where the BJP are winning almost all seats from Bihar. Then we have seen 2019 elections. So I personally see that there is a marked shift in Bihar politics after 2014 Lok Sabha election, where there is a new system emerging called saffron system, and that saffron system is again reviving the higher caste base a dominance in Bihar politics. So that is the whole scene that we have seen, that the Bihar politics from 1951 to 1967, which was exclusively Congress with oppositionless Bihar. In that 67, there was no challenge to the Congress. Then 67 to 1990, the challenges, there was an emergence of that is weak oppositions, which gave challenges on 5 occasions. The Congress party regimes was being challenged and replaced in Bihar for a short period of time, not for a full period of time. Then that was a transitional period. Then the third one was that the from 1990 to till 2000 till 2005 2010, in fact 14, that was a period of the assertion of the OBCs and lower caste politics using the prism of the social justice. Then from 2014 onwards, we have seen that a new system which is representing the national pattern in the Bihar politics, that saffron system reviving the higher caste base in Bihar is taking place. And so this is the whole backdrop for which I wanted to discuss. So my whole that the next discussion is all about looking at that how that the Bihar politics is to be looked at. I personally that there is 8 parameters which I'll be looking at. The one is that there is resurgence of the higher caste politics in Bihar. So the 2020 is going to witness the resurgence of the upper caste in the power structure of the Bihar. Second proposition would be that there will be a marginalization of the non-dominant groups, particularly OBCs, and there is an idea of stable and sustainable Hindu over dominance in overrepresentation in Bihar politics. Similarly, that the political the dynasties will actually be strengthened more, and then the Bihar politics will also be going with the criminalizations and experience. To always be said that if you are above, you have more winning chances in Bihar. Similarly, that there are money is involved, that if you are more richer. So I'll be looking at that money aspect, which educational aspect, which the public I will be drawing data from ADR studies. So these are the things which I'll be looking at from those point of view. So first, let me focus on that some of the things which the recent assembly elections will be happening. So we have already seen that the Bihar election is being announced and it is going to happen in 3 phases. And the first phase is going to start in just 4 days. On 28th October, you will be having first phase with 71 seats, and the second phase of elections will happen on 3rd November with 94 seats, and then the third phase will happen on the 7th November for 78 seats, and actually all the anxieties will be over on 10th November. So the total number of seats of Bihar is 243, and that 243 seats for scheduled caste, 38 seats are reserved, and for scheduled tribes, 2 seats are reserved, and for general, and we have already seen that the 203. So there are total around 7 crore 79 lakhs voters are there. So in that, 53% are male and 47% are female. So the ratio is 53 male voters, 53%, and 47% are male voters. And there are around around 7.4 lakh voters, new voters and youth voters. I personally say that. So who are having of 18 to 19 years of age, there are around 7.4 lakh voters. And imagine that, not only that, and in fact, there are 15 lakhs new voters and 3 lakhs old voters whose names got deleted from the voter list. Similarly, that can you imagine that there are 13 lakh voters who are above the age of 80 years. So these are some nuances which we cannot ignore, because sometimes age also decide the voting preferences, and in fact it is deciding in certain constituencies. So that is the whole thing. If we have to divide the entire Bihar, and we will be dividing, as many of us have already seen that, somebody has written that my voice is not audible. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Somebody
you're quite clear.
Okay. So if we divide the entire Bihar region, we will divide that the 5 regions, and that in that 5 regions, uh, there is one region, Tirhut regions, where there are 73 assembly seats and 12 Lok Sabha seats. Second reason is Mithila, which is a very politically conscious state. 43 Vidhan Sabha seats are there and 8 Lok Sabha seats. Magadha is a region where 65 um, Vidhan Sabha seats are there and 11 Lok Sabha seats. And Simanchal, which is which is having a highest Muslim presence in the area, where 40 Vidhan Sabha seats are there and 5 Lok Sabha seats. And there is the Bhojpur region, which is the uh, having 22 Vidhan Sabha seats and 4 Lok Sabha seats. So we have seen that the 5 regions, and 5 regions are different nuances. If I will say that, let me tell you, my friend, at the outset, that this time the 2020 assembly elections in Bihar, as people are saying that it is becoming more complex, it is becoming unusual. For me, which I see that it is quite crystal clear, elections, and there is hardly any complex nuances involved, except few constituencies which I will be looking at. So, but you cannot generalize the entire Bihar politics. In fact, there are 240 three assembly constituencies, and there are 243 ways of looking at the Bihar politics. You cannot have one yardstick and explain the Bihar politics. Each constituency is having a different nuances, and you will see that there is a gradual decline in the people's choice for a particular political parties. In fact, the alignment of the people with political parties is gradually declining, and more people are becoming floating votes. And the I can say that the idea of vote bank is also collapsing. That no political party can exclusively claim that I am having this much percentage of votes permanently aligned with us. No, there are shifting, because now there is an overlapping of the loyal voters from one party to another party. There is a cross voting party line preferences of the vote banks. So idea of vote bank is also collapsing. So the Bihar politics is all about that region specific politics. Each Lok Sabha, each Vidhan Sabha constituency is having its own dynamics of party presence, its own dynamics of leadership, its own dynamics of local issues, its own dynamics of sectarian divisions. So lots of things are happening in Bihar. So you cannot predict each, that is the entire Bihar electoral outcome with any one single principle. You should have an understanding of each assembly constituency. So let us look at that, how that percentage, that what is the marked shift in the voting preference of the political parties in Bihar. And let us take that 2010 Vidhan Sabha elections and foresee that the 2010 Vidhan Sabha election, because we should have a better understanding that which political party is having what proportion of strength in Bihar for the last 4 elections, 2 Vidhan Sabha elections and 2 Lok Sabha elections. Because if we will make an average of 2 Vidhan Sabha and 2 Lok Sabha, then we will have certain understanding of what is the lump sum base of a political party, a political grounding of that political party in. So let us see that there are 4 political parties, that is Rajad, which are of mainstream, Jadayu and BJP and Congress. So because you cannot, because out of which the 3 are more important, that Rashtriya Janata Dal and Janata Dal United and BJP. You cannot make power in Bihar without having an alliance. Means Bihar politics is more of an alliance after 2010. In fact, that is that 2010 with Vidhan Sabha, RJD has appropriated 19% vote, and in 2014, that 90 there is a gradual decline of RJD in Bihar. In Bihar, if you will look at the vote share and that gradual decline, you can see that the 2010 19%, 19 20%. 2014 Lok Sabha elections, the party has appropriated 20% votes, but 2015 with Vidhan Sabha, it got only 18% vote, though the party formed the government with Congress, but its vote share declined. Is to 18%. And if we look again at 2019 elections, the vote share of RJD has further declined to 15%. Means that the people, you cannot have the, you can the RJD cannot claim that the certain percentage of votes are extremely loyal to the party. The whole loyalty, the idea of vote bank of a political party is shrinking. That RJD started experiencing with a lot of distancing from the from its core voters. Similarly, that you will see that JDU and you can see that whenever JDU is in alliance with BJP, it performed better. It performed better. It has earned more share of votes, and you can see that from that this whole corner. In from 2010 elections, it got 23% of votes. In 2014 elections, that the JDU has got only 16% votes, and in 2015 elections, it got only 24% of votes. In 24%, and in 2019 elections, and it again got 22%. So in 2010, when JDU was in alliance with BJP, it got 23% vote. When alliance got broken, it got further reduced its vote share to 16%. Then it got reduced. Then there is a minor increase with of JDU going with RJD in 2015. It got only 17% vote, but the vote share of JDU further increased with when it went with the BJP. It got to 22% again. The idea is the natural ally, that Nitish Kumar is a natural ally of BJP. If you can, because the people are having more preferences for him if he is with the BJP. Similarly, that if I see that BJP single-handedly increased its vote share in Bihar politics, and if you can see that there is a whole BJP earning that, if I can say, that BJP started in 1990 with 11.6% vote, and it got increased to 13% in 1995. In 2000, it further increased to 14.6%, and then in 2005 October, it again 16% increase. In 2010 assembly election, it again went with a 16.5%, and in 2015 the BJP has got 24%, in fact 24.5%. And not only that, which I mean to say that it is a state in last 2015 elections, BJP got 37, in fact 38% of votes in the seats it contested the elections. So there is a gradual increase and of BJP in Bihar politics. So one cannot deny that the BJP is going to be the fate of the Bihar for a longer period of time after that. Similarly, that there is a Congress. Congress is decimated in Bihar, and it is a decline almost. It got reduced to merely 8% of vote after 2010-19. So it is playing just a second fiddle role. And if the Congress is not in alliance with RJD, it cannot gain that much percentage of vote, not that much percentage of the seats in the Bihar Assembly election. Means that for Congress, RJD or any other alliance is certainly a need. It has lost its its appeal amongst its voter. It does not have any core voter base. It is not having its own cadres, booth level cadres. So the Congress is a gone case in Bihar. But if we have to look at, these are the mainstream parties, but there are many other uh, uh, regional parties, smaller parties who are having some command over their own core social based constituencies, having limited presence in some of the areas where their core social constituencies are already there. So let's see that there is an LJP, there is an LJP, excuse me, there is a LJP is there, RLSP is there, Bhupendra Kushwaha, there is a Hum party, there is BSP, there is a left parties, is that, but we have to look at that. These political parties are confined that to some LJP has always been a force in Bihar with almost 7 to 8% vote base, and RLSP, which contested which started its career from 2014 election Lok Sabha, got reduced to the 3 to 4% of votes of its own, and Hum party, which has its own inning from 2015 elections, is having 2% of votes and votes, and similarly BSP is having a lump sum vote of 2%, and left is having the vote of that 3 to 4% voting base is of low of the left political parties in Bihar. Similarly, that if you will, that average voting, you will say that the BJP is having an average vote base in Bihar politics is of 24%. Means nothing less. If you make an average of the last 4 elections, the average vote base of BJP in Bihar is 24%. Similarly, that average vote that is share of JDU in the last 4 election is 16%. Similarly, the average base of Lojapa and LJP, Lok Jan Shakti party is 5%. Average vote share of in the last 4 election of Rajad is 18%, and similarly Congress is 8%. So if you will look at the entire whole things, the Bihar is a unique case. Let us look at that how that people of Bihar reacted. Bihar is known for a highly politically conscious voters. But if you will look at the voting process, how do we judge the people of Bihar is more participative in the political affairs? If I'll see that the people is, the data shows different things. People started, 1990 was a period when Bihar witnessed the higher voting choice participation, higher turnout. So 1990 to 2005, there was a higher participation of the Bihar voters, and from 2005 onwards, we have seen that there is a growing indifference of the voters from the electoral politics of Bihar, are the political voting choices. They are not able to exercise their voting choices. There may be some reasons, but there is a minimum presence. There is a substantial decline in terms of turnout in Bihar. See that 1990 was a phase when there was a huge shift taking place in Bihar politics. It got registered with 62% of the people of Bihar voted in the election. Similarly, that from 1990 to till 2005, February 2005, 62% voters turnout was maintained. But after 2005 October elections, it got reduced to 45%. In fact, 2005, only 45% people voted in the assembly elections. Similarly, that in 2010, this whole voters turnout got limited to 53%, and in 2015, that it is now 57% almost. So the idea is that the state which was which witnessed the greater participation of the people in the politics and in Vidhan Sabha, we usually see that more and more number of people are participating. But Bihar has witnessed a decline. Still, it has to gain its own participations, voters turnout, what it has achieved in 1990. So there is we can note that there is a growing indifference of voters, or there may be some other explanations are equally available due to the migration of the voters, the migrant people migrating from Bihar to certain cosmopolitan urban areas, not able to exercise their vote. There may be some other third explanations that some people say that in 1990 the participation of the people in the politics of Bihar was higher because many political parties, the dominant political parties, went with the rigging, booth capturing of the elections, and therefore the number have increased. But what is most important and very surprising, that if we will compare the voters turnout, we will say that the greater number of women voters are participating in the elections, and it is quite higher than many states. So the voters that the it is out in 2010 Vidhan Sabha elections, and we have seen that only 51% of male voters going for vote, while 55% of female voters are voting in the elections. Similarly, in 2004, we have seen the trend: 55% male voters voting in the elections, while 58% female voters. So again, 3% higher is there. So we have seen that in 2005 elections, we have seen that 53% male voters have voted, while 60% of female voters voted. Comparing that, 53. Similarly, in 2019 Lok Sabha elections, we have seen that now this time the male voters transcended the female voters. The 60% male voters voted, while 55%. So women is a political constituency because if I can say that the greater participation of women in Bihar politics may be one reasons that the males are going out of their state for work, and therefore female voters are left at home, and therefore they exercises more voting. So we cannot ignore that the women as an issue, that certain things which is specific to the women could also define their voting choices. Let us come to the whole dynamics of Bihar. That there is another way of looking at Bihar is that the dharmic, religious articulateness, and Bihar is known for that caste and community assertions. And if you look at the whole composition of the Bihar, that 82 and 83% voters are Hindus, and the Bihar is a state where 17% voters are Muslims, and there are around, and the remaining the minorities are confined to 1%. And in the Bihar Lok Sabha, what is more interesting is that we have already seen in the Lok Sabha that the representation of Muslims in Bihar started declining with certain exceptions in 2015 Vidhan Sabha. And that in 2000, if you will take the 2010 Vidhan Sabha as a yardstick, the Muslims got the highest representation in Bihar. 19 Muslims got elected. But idea is, and the representation again in 2015, there are 24. The 24 Muslim MLAs were there in Bihar Assembly, the highest ever in the latest period. But the problem is that Bihar is the one state where the Muslim society also experienced a social justice movement within it, and there were certain Pasmanda mobilizations within the community, and who started claiming that you cannot deny the lower caste Pasmandas within Muslims in representation. But because that is why they always highlight that the 80% of the representatives in Bihar who are given tickets are exclusively the Ashraf people and higher caste people whose size proportion in Bihar is not more than 20%. And similarly, that those and the Pasmanda who constitute around 80%, but not even 20%. These are certain things which are there. I will be looking at certain things in just in just few minutes. So let us look at the whole composition of that, the caste composition of the Bihar. So let me see that the in Bihar is where the caste is higher caste constitute around 21%. In out of 21%, Brahmins are 6% and Bhumiyars are 7%. Rajput are 4%, Kayas are 3%, and other higher caste is 1%. There is an OBCs in that OBCs that constitute entire OBCs 56%, in which Yadavs form 16%, the single largest the caste category of within OBCs are Yadavs. Similarly, the Kurmi and Kushwaha, that Kurmi constitute 5% and Kushwahas constitute 6% of Bihar, while Baniyas who are the gamut of many castes, they are forming 6%, and Ati Pichhadas and the low extremely backward castes, they are confined to 22% seats. Similarly, there is a Dalit and 16% are Dalits. In that 16%, 5% are Chamar, Dusad are 5%, the Musahar are 2%, and there are Anya, that is Mahadalis is 4% are there. There is no more Dalits are left. Almost everyone is Mahadalit with the caste calculations of parties. Similarly, that there are Ati Pichhadas parties in which 113 castes are there. Only that on OBC, the Pichhada are left with 31 castes. So 31 castes are in that is Pichhadas, and 113 castes are there in Ati Pichhadas list. Similarly, that in 22 Mahadalits are there, with Paswan joining Mahadalit category. No Dalit category is there. What is important is to look at the representation of this caste. So we have seen that Bihar Vidhan Sabha that there is an over dominance of the Yadavs since 2000 and in fact 1990. The Yadavs are getting more and more, and I have the data with me that in 2064 Yadavs, in 2005 54 Yadavs, 2010 39 Yadavs, 2015 61 Yadavs were there as an MLA in Bihar. Similarly, Rajputs in 2026 Rajputs were there, 23 Rajputs in 2005, 2010 34 and then 20 in 2015. So in Bhumihars are also that is having a very sizable presence, Brahmins, and while Kurmis are also having a presence, and I have the data, and I think what is more important is to look at that there are 200 caste categories who never got any representation, never ever got any representation in Bihar Assembly, and that is most alarming. That so if you are talking about the social justice and there are huge many categories of people who are left out, means there are few dominant categories that the whosoever may come to power, that the elites will remain the same. So there is no bigger change is happening, and those who are marginalized will remain be marginalized, and they will never get any representation into that. So similarly, that those are the situations in Bihar, and we have seen that lots of other things, and there is another Bihar. I told you that it is a more competitive state, because if you will look at the average number of political parties contesting the Bihar politics, the average number of candidates contesting per candidates are very interesting. And we have seen that in 1990, and there were only 45 political parties were seen. in the Bihar politics. So means there are very and the serious political parties were not more than 6 and 7. Now that we have seen that in 2015 elections, we have seen that around 157 political parties contesting the elections. So a shift from 45 to 157, and 2020 is going to have another new political parties, 20 more political parties that will be increasing to almost 180. So 180 to 200 political parties are now into the scene. But the effective number of relevant parties are different. There are around 10 political parties who are actually sincere in the elections. So if there are only 10 to 12 political parties who are seriously contesting the elections, what task is being done? What task is being performed by those registered non-recognized political parties? Are they increasing the competitiveness of the Bihar politics? Are they proxies of the mainstream political parties? Are these the machines of converting black money into white money, because the income of the political parties are exempted from Income Tax Act? Are they just to break the social constituencies that one caste constitution, each caste will have its own political parties? There is a fragmentation of the social caste capital in Bihar politics. So that is a point to be noted. And we have seen that now almost each caste groups in Bihar in almost are having their own political face and political party. So this is very, very important to note that what is going to be the fate of the caste politics when almost every political party, so the weight of the caste coming together will be reduced. Similarly, we have seen that average number of candidates have increased in the Bihar elections. Similarly, that almost there are on an average 14 to 15 candidates per constituency are there. So the average number of candidates, are they increasing? That the number of effective number of candidates contesting the elections, they have increased that the data. In fact, in 2020, we have seen that each of the, on an average, we can calculate that there are 14 to 16 number of candidates on an average to each political constituency. So they are increasing the competitiveness. They are also affecting the winning chances of the mainstream political parties in Bihar. So we have also seen that 2005 and almost I can say that if you are, what is the whole Bihar? There is, it's a very different system. If you are Bahubali, if you are a person with criminal charges, you have a more winning chances, because the winning chances increases with almost 40% probabilities of you will win the elections if you are having a person of criminal background, because there is no shaming political parties fielding the candidates with criminal background. And Bihar is quite a prime case to judge the whole principle that if you are having more criminal candidates in your fold, you will be winning more political winning chances will increase. And that is why we have seen that is in fact 2015 16, we have seen that 2015 itself there were around 140 MLAs. In fact, more than 50% of MLAs are having serious criminal charges and criminal charges. That is, if that simply says that what the whole dynamics of the Bihar is. Not only that, in fact, the first phase, the ADR has just came out with an analysis of 2020 that almost analyzing those candidates who are going in first phase. They have analyzed 1064 candidates, and out of that in Bihar, 31% candidates are with criminal charges. 31%. And highest number of criminals contesting the election is in the first phase with RJD. 73% of the candidates are with criminal charges. Not only that, BJP is no less. there are around 72% candidates of the BJP is also having the criminal backgrounds. LJP is having 59% its candidates having serious charges. Similarly, that the lowest criminal background candidates are from JDU, and they are 43%. So they see that why do these Bahubalis are getting seats? People say that the winnability is one of the criteria, and they are right. So in Bihar, it's still a feudal society, Samantwadi Vyavastha, where people align with the whole glamour of the candidates, be it the crime, be it the money, be it the education. So idea is that if you are a criminal, you are having a more chances. Not only that, so similarly, if you are dynastic, you are again having a more winning chances, because can you imagine that there are 40 in 2000 in 2015 only, there were 35 families where they're having 44 MLAs. So 35 families having 44 MLAs, and they are perpetuated and they are constantly winning the Bihar election. In fact, this time 41 families are there and 76 candidates we have already seen. So the idea is, if you are more dynastic, you are having a political family, you are having a more winning chances in the elections. And if you will go that the background check, almost 46% of the candidates, because if we calculate the entire third phase, first phase to third phase, because all the candidates are announced, 46% of the candidates given by the mainstream political parties are having dynastic roots. Either they are the son or daughter or niece or chacha bhatija. So it is also true. And why political parties are more giving? It's all because of that. They have rasuk in their areas. Similarly, they have resources to contest the election. Third, they are having a greater patronage and enjoying a network amongst the voter. And fourth is all about that the credibility and the amongst the voters and the traditional loyal voters. So idea is the dynastic politics still is that 46%, and no political parties is left. Be it Congress, be it BJP, be it Janata Dal, JDU, almost every political party have fielded the caste in the same dynastic families having a dynastic roots. What is more important is to look at that the average, because if you are a poor, if you are a middle class person, you cannot think of contesting the election, and particularly in Bihar, in almost every case. But you cannot think of that on an average that the only in the first phase 2 crores. So the average asset of the candidates contesting the elections in Bihar is 2 crore. So imagine a situation, and there are and there are around 10% of the candidates who are having wealth more than 5 crore, and there are only in this election not more than 12 candidates are there who have filed zero asset. So whether they will win the elections or not, I'm not sure. But the winnability is ensured if you are having a greater resources at your hand. If you are a crorepati, you can have a better chances of winning the Bihar elections. Similarly, that the having no linkages of the educations. If you are more educated, does not mean that you will be inviting more number of votes. No. If you are unexperienced, the experience counts the most in Bihar. And this time, 2014 is having a different whole calculations. The age is, if you'll go with the whole analysis of the educational qualifications, interestingly and quite importantly, 43% of the candidates whose educations are confined to 5th class to 12th class, but at the same time, 49% of the candidates are graduates or above. So these are very important. There is an increasing number of women contesting the elections. So if you will be analyzing the entire age categories, because we have seen that lots of things 25 to 40 years, the almost 38% candidates in Bihar this time in 2020 is between 25 to 40, and many young lots are taking chances in these elections. But still, the middle-aged groups are dominating the scene. 51% are between 41 to 60%. But at the same time, and there is 11% of the candidates are 61 to 80%. So these are the things which we have to look at the whole phenomena, and we have seen that there is a caste dynamics involved into it. And what is that caste dynamics? We have to look at that. This time we have seen that every political party is trying to appease the higher caste. Every political parties, and now every Congress is trying to appease the higher caste more. And out of 70 seats it got to contest 2020 assembly election in Bihar, 34 seats it has given to the Bihar and to upper caste, and out of which 9 are Brahmins, 9 are Rajputs, 11 are Bhumihars, and the 4 are 9 are Bhumihars and 4 are Kayas. And while 12 Muslim candidates are being fielded by the Congress, and similarly 12 Dalits and 4 EBCs candidates are there. So you will see that there is a greater possibility of political parties reaching out to the higher caste. And you know that, like in Bihar, like Muslim and Yadavs have consolidated in favor of BJP, and we have seen 2005 elections is the largest mobilizations taking place in these two categories in favor of the UPA alliance. This in 2020 again the same formula is there, and BJP who is still banking on the higher caste, they have also given out of 110 candidates almost 46% candidates of BJP is higher caste, and 51 upper caste candidates are contesting from the BJP, and 22 out of which 22 are Rajputs, 11 are Brahmins, 15 are Bhumiyas, 3 are Kayas. 59 seats are given to OBCs and SCs, and what is more important, that the BJP is hell bent upon making a dent in Yadav votes. They have done successfully in 2014 and 15 elections, and therefore 15 seats are given to Yadavs. Similarly, JDU out of 115 it is contesting, 19 upper caste votes are given, means that to appease the higher caste votes, BJP was given the whole responsibility, while JDU remained confined to appealing the OBCs the most. But out of that 19 upper caste vote, the 10 are Bhumiyars and 7 are Rajputs, 2 are Brahmins, and there are 9 EBC candidates from JDU. Then there are 15 Kushwaha candidates, 12 Kurmi candidates, and what is more interesting is to note that there are 18 Yadav candidates are also given by JDU to make a dent in Yadavs, and of course there will be certain shift. There are 17 ACs and 10 Muslim candidates are being fielded by JD. RJD is more that there are only 12 higher caste candidates by RJD, but 58 candidates are Yadavs, means that this time RJD and the last time as well more concerned about consolidating the Yadavs base. 17 Muslim candidates are there with RJD and 25 extremely backward caste. What is interesting to note in 2020 is that there are 70 assembly constituencies where that the same caste groups are pitched against each other, same caste groups. So if there are Yadavs, Yadav facing Yadavs, Bhumiyar facing Bhumiyars, and Rajputs facing Rajputs. So idea is there are 70 candidates. So if I that 70 seats, so there are 23 seats in Bihar right now where there is a contest between Yadavs versus Yadavs, and there are 13 seats where there is a Bhumiyar versus Bhumiyar. There are 6 seats where Rajput versus Rajput. There are 2 seats Kayas versus Kayas. 5 seats Brahmin versus Brahmin, and Kurmi 1 seat Kurmi versus Kurmi. So this is also very important. And most important dynamics is the LJP. Many things are happening. LJP is contesting that the 135 seats, in fact 134 seats, and almost it has fielded its candidates in almost all those assembly constituencies where JDU is contesting, except one seat where Sikati is there, where the uh, they did not field, LJP did not field any candidate. Similarly, that one Narkatiyaganj, there are 2-3 seats are there with BJP where LJP will be fighting the friendly fight with the BJP. And what is interesting is to note that almost 24 candidates from LJP are having a BJP or RSS background. So 24 candidates, and it is giving shape to the rumor that it is the second NDA. Fine, and already Chirag has said that I am the Hanuman of Narendra Modi ji. He is giving lots of praise. Similarly, that out of not only there, 40% of the candidates of LJP is from the higher caste background. So one has to look at the entire dynamics. What the dynamics are, that there is a huge power, no doubt there is an anti-incumbency in Bihar. JDU is going to be the biggest loser, and this JDU's loss is not BJP's gain. In fact, JDU's loss is RJD plus Mahagathbandhan's gain. Similarly, LJP's launch as an independent party in Bihar is the gain for both BJP and RJD smart. But in almost all situations, the NDA is more placed to win the elections this time with the majority. In fact, I personally see that they may be able to fetch majority, and I also feel that the Nitish Kumar is going to be the CM, whatever the vibes are coming this time from the Bihar. So we have to just look at those scenarios. With this, I am just winding up my discussions. Let's see that which way the wind blows the Bihar, but it's not very complex. It's easy to guess who are going to get the powers. In fact, it's almost certain that BJP and its allies will be forming the government in Bihar. So whosoever may form the power, BJP is going to be an ally. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening me. Thank you. Ariba, over to you.
Thank you, sir. It was a very good experience listening to you. I think you have succinctly put everything in perspective from the historical point of view to the new dynamics that is emerging. I would now like to request Sarthak Bagchi to take over for the question and answer round. He is an assistant professor at the Ahmedabad University at the School of Arts and Sciences. Over to you, Sarthak.
Hi, thank you, Ariba, for organizing this wonderful forum for also this platform, research platform, and also for having this very interesting talk on Bihar politics, which seems to be the flavor of the month for this year, for this time. And Professor Alam, it's always so nice to listen to you, and I think I mean, as Ariba put in, that you very nicely had put out the entire perspective from a historical account also, and talking about the Mandal politics and the rise of the OBC, and also the changes in the party system in Bihar, especially, how the fragmentations happened and how these different Janata Dal fragments came up, and the rise of small parties also, like LJP and RLSP for that matter, and how these came up. And I think what also is very important and also very insightful was these small details that you gave about the extent of the dynasty candidates, or the extent of same caste competition between different parties, and also the kind of switch over between candidates who are turning over from one party to another, like the case that you mentioned about LJP, basically. I think these important insights, also women as voters and women as contestants also. And I think these are very important issues, and these have been issues which have been written about a lot and which are being discussed right now as Bihar goes into the polls. And I just wanted to highlight one thing, that probably that when we look at the rise of the backward caste politics in Bihar, one also has to understand this not only from as a post-Mandal phenomenon, but the actual origins of this, what is called as the dispersal of inequality. That idea goes back into the Congress time itself, when Congress was in dominance, and there were different factions within the Congress. Like you mentioned, the Congress system, and within that system there were these different factions, like KB Sahai's faction and BN Jha, which accommodated and initiated these such kind of politics, which enabled a larger participation from the OBC, backward caste leaders to emerge, which is what we saw in 1967. Before anybody else, before any of the other backward caste leaders, there was a EBC, extremely backward caste chief minister in Bihar, in the form of Karpuri Thakur. So I think it's also very important to understand what is happening in the present times from the historical context, which you have very well laid out. So thank you for that. I will ask some of the questions that are here listed by the participants, as I've been asked to do. And since I also work on Bihar, and I also studied on Bihar politics for last, I think, seven years, I think. So I will be also asking some of my own questions, along with, I will be piggybacking on these questions that have been asked by some of the participants. So I think there is a question which has been asked, and which I think is linked to a question that has been on my mind also. That it is asked by Evangeline Nongkwala, and she asked that what are the chances of MIM making inroads into Bihar politics? Will their alliance win any seat? So MIM is in alliance with Upendra Kushwaha's RLSP and BSP, which is the Bahujan Samaj Party in UP. So, and a few other small parties, right? So the question will be to understand what are the chances of MIM making any inroads into Bihar politics. But my accompanying question is, when we look at the Muslim politics in Bihar, we know that there is no, like you said about the vote bank, and there is no one monolith of the Muslim vote bank, right? Definitely when we talk about OBCs, we talk about the differentiation between OBCs, upper OBCs versus the lower OBCs or the extremely backward caste. We talk about these differences. But when we talk about Muslim politics, apart from the Basmanda and the elite Muslims, we don't really talk about certain kind of, say, caste differentiations or certain kind of regional differentiations. Like the Muslims in Simanchal vote and think differently from the Muslims in Bhojpur, right? The Muslims in Bhojpur are more supporting the Yadav or the RJD, kind of political parties. But the Muslims in Simanchal vote differently and also think differently. So I just wanted you to highlight on that, because we know that for a fact that the Asian Development Research Institute in Patna has classified that there are about 43 castes or jatis found within Muslims in Bihar. So this is not a monolith, definitely not a monolith, and definitely it needs to understood in the complexities that happen. So one is, what are the complexities or what are the breakdowns of the Muslim vote in Bihar? And then if AIMM, which is Owaisi, will he be able to appeal to these complexities, or will he be able to ride over these complexities and make it into a one Muslim vote which supports him, right? So that may be the first question.
All right. First, Sarthak, it's good to see you after a long time. And last we met at SCU.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and the contextualization of the discussion. And And all right, let us come back to MIM first.
Yes.
You know that MIM, what it appears on media, social media, traditional social media, is actually missing on the ground. So I personally think that the Muslims in general and Muslims of Bihar in political have never voted for a party who are exclusively Muslim. One. So their voting preferences has always been those who either claim as a secular party, who either claim as a centrist party, who either claim as a party who can take on the right wing political parties. So their voting preferences has most of the time is secular. Muslims, if you will look at the candidates voting, Muslims hardly vote Muslims. If we will analyze that, if there are 4 candidates, their affiliation is mostly with the party lines in general. So the idea is whether MIM is just about that somebody is trying to project a Muslim league in the pre-partition politics. Like if you want to bring back the memory of the pre-partition, you need a Muslim league. So idea is that you need a political party which exclusively claim a Muslim party in Bihar and some any other. Otherwise, you cannot make a larger narratives. One. So, but the Muslims are not going with that and with the MIM. There are young affiliates who are having a lesser memories of the pastime voting, who are Muslim enthusiasts, and every community is having certain enthusiasts who come out with banners and statements and some media management, and they are into the discussion. They are the gossip political parties. So the idea is MIM, I don't think so, is going to make out as a winning candidate, except 1 or 2. That it is in debate in 2 seats in Bihar is Amori, that is where and Jokihardt seat and the Wisam. So 2 seats where the MIM is having a serious candidate. Remaining other seat, it is a friendly fight. But they have and I am not saying that the MIM has no right to contest the election. Second one is that I have recently given the interview to CNN where I have seen that the Muslim vote in Bihar is more divided than any other votes. So there is a division on party lines that the Muslims are there because there is an increased number of, there is an explosion of political parties in Bihar. So each political parties are having certain bases in tips and bits, minor to substantial number of votes among the Muslim votes. Similarly, that there are Papu Ado is having a claim over the Muslim votes. Then there are Hum is having a claim on certain areas on Muslim votes. Then RLSP is having certain claim on the Muslim votes. Similarly, JDU is so lots of claimants of their own on Muslim votes, non-BJP claimants are there Muslims. Second one is regional lines. So that I am saying that I told you in the beginning, all 43 constituencies having its own distinct dynamics. You cannot generalize it at all. Bihar is such a case. So at this time, there is no party affiliations. There are more candidate affiliation voting is going to happen this time. So idea is that the Muslims are equally divided on regional lines, that the Mathilis are having a different orientations, the Bhojpuris are having different dynamics, and the Simanchals are having a different. So idea is there are regional variations. Similarly, there are variations on the candidate lines. There is a leadership of the capital of the Muslim vote. So the idea there are few leaders who command more. The Fatimis are having its own, Qasimis, Fatimis, Siddiqis, and lots of regional leaders who are in different political parties. So they are having their own base. Wherever they will go, the large certain chunk of votes will go with them. So if they join BJP, that votes will go to the BJP as well. So that's the variation. There are sectarian lines.
But the BJP has not nominated any Muslim candidates. In its 110, BJP has not nominated.
No, not a single seat. Not a single
seat. And it has been doing that consistently.
And they have done so rightly because as a strategic reasons. If I am I'm a BJP master, I will be going back looking at the winnability as a front.
Yeah.
Last time they experimented with 2 candidates, but they had to face ultimately. So this time in sector in Simanchal region, Kulaiyas are having a different orientation. There are traditional rivalries. Suljapuri cases, Kulaiya cases, lots of dunyas. Similarly, within the Pasmandas, there are divisions. So there is a Gauss Ansari is with the Jadiyu, and the Ali Anwar is having a different, got succeeded. So the idea is Muslim votes are highly fragmented this time in Bihar. But in Simanchal, Muslims division is not going to happen because of CAA. The recent is on the ground. If you will survey that, talk to the people, that the stand of Nitish Kumar on CAA and recent appeal of JP Nadda saying that due to Corona and we did not come out with the CAA is again revived the memories of the CAA in Bihar amongst the Muslim voters. Right. So the division which was apparent around 15 days back may evaporate slightly with the course of time. So the idea is Bihar is a very, very different setup. Muslims have always gone with the party who claim for social justice, centricism, and candidates having a non-saffron background. Yes. Right. So I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. Thank you. I mean, because I think apart from this being the first election in India during the pandemic, it is also the first election after the CAA was implemented. So that is also something to be seen. And I think we were not getting much analysis into that front because in February, Congress and Kanhaiya Kumar, they were organizing this Samvidhan Bachao Yatra across Bihar, and in the Simanchal region that was seen very popularly. They had a very good response. But we will have to see how it unravels in the in the election time or in the campaign time this time. So another question is by Narendra Kumar Jarwal, and I'm asking this because it also has the word Owaisi. So Narendra is asking that Mr. Owaisi says Nitish Kumar has fallen out of favor with the BJP. It is likely that he will be shown the door. Given this, what happens? What changes do you see of BJP alliance coming? What chances actually do you see of BJP alliance coming to power?
No, I did not get the question.
So basically, he's saying that Nitish Kumar has fallen out of favor with the BJP, and it is likely that he will be shown the door. So if this happens, are there any chances of the BJP alliance coming to power?
See that. What is the outcome is almost crystal clear. And I do not see any confusion. What is being claimed that Nitish Kumar is going to be the CM after the elections. And what he may be able to continue for 6 months, it's a different issue. After 6 months, there may be an engineered split within JDU, and Nitish Kumar is shown door, but Nitish Kumar will be invited despite whatever number of seats JDU win in the elections. One. Second is, so 6 months, at least he is going to be the CM for 6 months, which I personally see. There will be engineering. And what is the likelihood of the BJP forming the government? For me, that there is a 60% probability of BJP forming the government in this state. 60% probability.
Right.
And it is clear why, because LJP is a master stroke.
LJP is a?
Master stroke, not because of weakening the JDU, but ensuring the victory of the BJP in 115 seats. So idea is that otherwise, Paswan is having some traditional votes. Imagine, what am I going to see that? Just listen carefully. Last time in 2015, BJP contested 157 seats. And 53 seats it won. How many seats are left? And in the remaining seats, Sarthak, BJP came as a second party.
Right.
53. Second runner-up party, that is not important. But this time, they are contesting how many seats? Only that, around 110 seats. And out of 110 seats, they are about to lose where they are already relevant. in the around 48 seats, they're already relevant. But due to the alliance with JDU, they could not get the chances. And where the rebel candidates of the BJP are there. So how to tap the alliances already in those areas? BJP is having a base. JDU did not go with that. In those areas, the votes of the LJP will be added as a bonus for the BJP for the LJP in that not so. Votes of the LJP will be the bonus for its own candidate, so-called rebel. And there is a dissatisfaction. BJP knows that there is a huge anti-incumbency in this state. People, the Chirag Paswan claim is that Modi tusse bair nahi, Nitish teri khair nahi, reviving the Rajasthan catchy slogan in here. Here, the people of Bihar who vote for BJP will never vote for RJD. They're habituated because they're anti-RJD votes. And those who vote for Nitish Kumar, when Nitish is with BJP, will never vote for JDU. So the alternative should not be looking at RJD. So the dissatisfaction of the people on the ground against JDU is to be tapped by the JDU. And I am sure, I'm saying that LJP is going to get at least 15 seats.
Okay.
Which I personally guess.
Yeah.
Already, because last time they contested 42 seats, ensured 2 as a victory, but on 36 seats, they were the second one.
Right.
So the idea is, if BJP, whatever LJP's gain is NDA's gain. Similarly, RLSP is going to weaken JDU, not the... so they are looking at JDU to at least get 40 seats. So and BJP at least get more than 80. So I personally feel, because with 3 parties, with 3 seats with VIP and 2 seats with HUM and 40 seats with, so the negotiation capacity of the JDU is over, at least in those areas where BJP is already there. So BJP has done a master stroke.
Right.
It will ensure its own victory, but the loss of JDU is gain for RJD as well.
Right.
In many seats.
So I think you are also, summarizing it in a way that it is JDU versus everyone in this election, in a way.
Yeah.
So
almost everybody is fighting JDU.
BJP, so it's basically JDU versus everybody.
Yeah.
Right. I think on a related line, there was a question from Dr. K.V. Surendran, and it was one of the first questions. What are the chances of Nitish Kumar coming back to power? I think you have clearly mentioned that. He also has a second question. There's a second part, which is, will it mark the end of Ram Vilas Paswan effect in Bihar politics? So I'm not sure what Ram Vilas Paswan effect is, but I think you're also very clearly laid out the impact of LJP's politics. So we will move to the next question, I think, which is an interesting one. Again, talking about the issues by Temjenungla Imsong, and he's asking that how would you locate the case of Sushant Singh Rajput with the polls of Bihar? Is it polls have magnified and politicized the death case?
See that there was a calculation behind Sushant Singh Rajput.
And link it with the Rajput candidates that BJP has.
This is what I am saying. I am going to argue that.
Yes.
That if you will be analyzing this 2015 era, Rajputs are the aspirant category to the power this time. They are more looking for higher representations in the power structures, and there is a contest, and they got antagonized with Nitish Kumar, and therefore Rajad also trying to influence the Rajput candidate with giving more candidates. BJP and the Congress giving more seats to Rajput candidates. So the idea is how to tap the anxieties, and one has to create the anxieties among the Rajput case. So if to create an anxiety, you need a case, and Sushant Singh is just a matter of coincidence. Happens to be from the Rajput community, and got inflated out of the proportion in media to just affect the consciousness of the Rajput voters and Rajput candidates, prospective candidates, to start claiming that the Rajput solidarity started making out. Otherwise, Rajputs have mainly been a centrist voter. So they started claiming that no, that we need to emerge as an important dominant political constituency like 60s, 50s and 60s, and we have to again claim back. But with the whole of, in fact, Kalidas type, that it is not going to deliver anything in this elections, despite certain consolidations of the vote. There will be minor shift of the Rajput voters from BJP. So they will be remaining. I told you that it's just like an opium. Voting for BJP is eating opium. Once you voted for BJP, you will always try to vote for BJP because you are convinced more or less. Then you decide for voting, because deciding to vote for BJP is a very hard task. Once you decided, you will go with. So it's not going to affect the electoral outcome completely, because those they are less in number and they will be affecting certain seats, but not very much. There are migrant issues and there are other flood issues. They are not able to affect the electoral outcome this time.
Yes, I wanted to ask that. Like, how do you see the migrant issues and the flood issues? And because also when we see that you were mentioning also in your presentation that about the youth voters, right? I mean, and young voters are a very important kind of vote bank for all parties, right? And in that sense, we see that unemployment has become an issue. But do you see that because Modi's offering is basically employment not in the form of jobs but in the form of opportunities, which is very different from jobs, which is about skill development and linking it to ITI and other things, which the BJP has been consistently doing. So I just wanted to ask you that how do you think that is having an effect or spillover kind of an effect in terms of the results?
Sarthak, on a lighter note, I personally see that once the Bihar election is over, there will be no corona and there will be no berojgari. Since everybody is offering that. So 10 lakhs one, 19 lakh another one. But what is important is that for the first time, the discourse is changing in speeches, in campaigns. And it is the success, and I personally feel that the RJD and Plus who try to shift the narratives to these issues, and for which, because job is very important and that is linked with migrant laborers losing the job, because almost most of the labor is supplied by the Bihar, and they are not electoral categories. They are indifferent voters. Because they are more concerned with their livelihoods. They have never been very, very politically articulate class. Those are Parvasi Mazdoors. And I don't think so that it will be affecting the electoral outcome in certain areas, but they are fragmented. They are not a category. They are having they belong to the different caste, class, and community dynamics. So they cannot emerge as a category to decide the voting block. So one is they have never been very, very articulate. They are more into ensuring livelihoods, and they are being taken as a voter who are mortgaged, are hired, are being by the political parties. So they can go with the immediate rewards offered by any political parties. Similarly, floods are not a new phenomenon in Bihar politics. It has never been a very, very new phenomenon. It has always been the Bihar politics is being affected by the floods. But it affecting the voting behavior? No. Had it been the case, the political situation in Bihar wouldn't have been the issue. When Naveen Nitish Kumar came out with Nutan Bihar idea, that new Bihar, that's where there will be a talk on Bijli. That perception, the same man who was known as Vikas Purush is got reduced to a person who is antithetical to Vikas in that one election. Imagine a situation that it is not like that he did not do the developments. He did. There are lots of complexities and compulsions in the electoral politics, but the political behavior of the people are decided by perceptions, and the perception on the ground is more about that Nitish Kumar did not do for the migrant laborers. He did not rewarded them timely response, the corona cases, like this. So one case that the people got disillusioned. In fact, those who are core voters of Nitish are talking about change. They got disillusioned with Nitish Kumar. So the idea is floods are always the case. The Pravasi voters are not particularly rewarded articulate class. They always go with immediate rewards offered by any political parties, and they are staying there.
Right.
But idea is, despite all anxieties, Bihar was a case where there was so much stress amongst the voters, anxieties. They were willing for change, but oppositions did not come out with the credible narratives. It came out because last minute narratives hardly pure. You have to create the narratives from day one.
Yeah.
So in last 3 months, you started picking up issues will not affect the voting choices of the candidates. But these agendas raised by the AGPs have earned more seats. Earlier, I was thinking that the Grand Alliance may be able to confine to 60 seats, 60 to 65 seats. I think they have increased further in that last 15 days, 15 to 20, because voting is a last minute things. And after first phase will be almost clear that what is the whole issue is dominating. I'm rating that 80 to 85 seats they may come up.
Right. Yeah, I think also the elections in Bihar are very dynamic in nature for that matter, because I think in the last 2015 also we understood that, things changed after the second phase actually in favor of the Mahagathbandhan and Nitish Kumar, because I think till September first week or second week, BJP was going to sail through the elections in 2015 as well. So let us see how the campaign plays a very important role in that sense. And let's see how
I'm just telling you that, and interestingly, it was center who was dealing with the corona situations. The state were given limit, but the anger was not against Mr. Modi. Yes. The anger was diverted to Mr. Nitish Kumar, and that's the art of the BJP. I appreciate there is
also art of the narrative.
Managers. Of the narrative. So wherever there is a non-BJP government there, they divert the entire blame on the center, and that is their success.
Yeah.
And therefore, Modi is going to contest in 2000 and at least 115 assembly constituencies. It is not going to be any other candidate except Modi. So it is Modi who is going to contest 110 assembly constituencies for BJP.
Absolutely. In fact, actually, when you talk about floods also, it's very important to understand that in 2010, when Nitish was at the peak of his popularity and his strike rate was close to 90%, JDU as well as BJP also. At that time, the 2009, there was a Kosi flood, which was very, very, very big in scale. And Nitish Kumar gained popularity, or his image as the Sushashan Babu also gained credibility when he was actually out on the border regions of India, Nepal, and he was in the district headquarters and personally overseeing all the relief work. But we could see that he's become so, distant from that kind of administration and that kind of a very, personalized administration. That is something, a remarkable change. And that has also, I think, led to the idea of the anti-incumbency in Bihar. So, right. I think there is a question from Shafiq Ahmed, who is asking that BJP is using Article 370 and Gupkar Declaration against the opposition. So how it is important for Bihar, where maximum voters are illiterate, or in the sense, might not be informed about this Gupkar Declaration and Article 370.
Let me tell my friends, BJP hardly does anything which is not relevant. It is a very, very calculated move. And when I'm telling you that in 110 assembly constituencies, Mr. Modi is going to contest the election as an MLA, and people will be voting for him, then what he did is important. Right. So the idea is perception is being created. Only a BJP can do things with certainties.
Right.
Second, only BJP can make Muslims learn a lesson. That is a hard, crude reality.
Right.
So if you will look at that Ram Mandir, no political parties could ever think of Modi can do it. So Modi is Masiha, what once upon a time Lalu was the Masiha for poor. So now for the new class of voters, Modi is a Masiha, and what he did revives the memories of the voters. See that they may not be working on the 370, but they know Kashmir.
Right.
They will be referring to Kashmir, not 370.
National security.
Yeah, they will be referring Ram Bhumi. They will be referring to different things. So idea is now idea of a Hindu vote have emerged after in no times. There is people used to talk Muslim vote. No, with rise of Modi, the idea of Hindu vote got consolidated. That has come on this.
Right.
So.
Right. So I think on that line that you said, and I think this is the last question that I think probably because we are terribly over time also, I think. So the Dr. Om Prakash Upadhyay is asking this question, and I'll try to read this. So he's talking that the disappearance of Lalu Yadav from this election, who, like you said, is the leader of the downtrodden and Masiha, will it benefit the BJP and the JDU, like his disappearance from Lalu from the election, and which has been pointed out by BJP leaders also, right? That Lalu is missing from the posters. And is the division of votes of OBCs between RJD and JDU and Dalit and Mahadalit between Paswan, Manji and BSP, is it going to benefit the BJP JDU alliance? And thirdly, he wants to ask that law and order situation has turned minds of people towards JDU. So do you think that one is about the Sushashan and law and order? Is JDU going to on a positive trend because of that? Second is the division of votes between of OBCs between JDU and RJD and the Dalit, which is now divided between Paswan, Maji and BSP. Is it going to probably help the BJP-JDU alliance? And the first one, which is disappearance of Lalu from this election.
See, the first is, of course, yes. For the first question, Lalu is missed greatly in 2019 and 2020 elections. And for RJD's victory in 2050, it was the Lalu's victory and nobody's else. Yes. And he's a charisma.
Yeah.
And even his opponents, but one charismatic figure is missing from in opposition. Only one charismatic leader who is a Lalu, who can change the electoral outcome, but he is missing. But NDA is having two charismatic leaders on their sides. Nitish Kumar is still having this. People may abuse him. People at the last minute, hey, isi ko de do. So the idea is Nitish Kumar is like that. वो सबके साथ है. There is one poster. Nitish ji सबके साथ है. In fact, even Muslim voters think of if the JDU candidates are contesting. Mahadalit, he has done everything for something for everyone.
Yeah.
So be it Mahadalits, be it extremely backward caste. So the idea is there is no hard hatred against Nitish Kumar.
Yeah.
There is an anger. And anger is not about that always go against. There was an anger against BJP as well in 2019. But it did not translate into non-voting for BJP.
Right.
So the idea is there is an anger against Nitish Kumar, and Nitish Kumar is still a figure. It's still, had he not been a figure, BJP wouldn't have gone with it. And Modi is still a charismatic, because it is going to affect the electoral behavior. Similarly, Mahadalits, which was in opposition, is already with them.
Right.
So idea is that EBCs and Dalits are now habituated to vote for BJP. A large chunk of these categories started voting for BJP and its allies from 2014 onwards. So that is why I'm saying that the idea of Hindu vote is emerging. So the idea is Mahadalits is not with the only with the JDU. Depending upon the local candidates. Idea is this time in this election, candidate selections matters. Congress would have done better had there been a very good selection of the candidates. Because of the poor selections, it may be losing easily 20 seats is a clear crystal. In the remaining 50 seats, they are in contest. But how many they will win, whether they will win 10 or 15 or 20, it is a matter of time. But 20 seats they lost because of the candidate selection. Jale was a seat in Darbhanga. They lost it because the narrative suddenly shifted there. And it's a Muslim dominant area though. So the idea is one has to think of, and there has always been a division of OBC votes after that is 1995. So Yadavs versus Koiri and Kurmi, the whole narrative was built after 1995. So it's about that. And now again that Koiri Kurmi, like Muslim and Yadav contest, the same category is also under challenge with RLSP coming up with having a claim on the JDU. My whole position is JDU is not having its core base except Kurmis. Now that is also being challenged with new leadership emerging in certain areas. There is a lost BJP. Nitish advantage is floating voters.
Right.
Then, and the what is the third question?
So about the law and order question. That
law and order question. See that it is also very tricky, and see that Lalu was always blamed for Jangal Raj, Gunda Raj, and when everyone lost hope, again he won with thumping majority in 2000.
Right.
In 2000, everybody like written off Lalu. No, because the narrative was in the market. That no. Ideas, and when there is a dissatisfaction, now the law and order. I told you, Sarthak, you know that Indian voters are not rational voters. In fact, any voters in the world, the last minute immediacy will happen. Law and order is an added factor. If I started disliking the incumbent, if law and order is there, it is a talaka. So it cannot be a sole reason for shifting the voting alliance. But it will be a factor. The idea is Bihar and Bihari voters are prone to vote to Bahubalis. Why do they vote? And around 46% candidates in 2015 election MLAs are having a criminal charges. So people are having a nature. So idea is law and order is a preference, but it is an additional preference when all other attributes are matching.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for engaging and for giving very, very pointed replies, and I think also very elaborate replies to all these very interesting questions. And once again, thank you for this very stimulating kind of a presentation, which gives us a very overall picture of Bihar politics, and also makes us very makes us look forward to what is actually going to happen in the coming few days in Bihar, as well as perhaps its other implications on national politics as well. So thank you, Professor Alam. Over to you, Sarika.
Thank you, Dr. Sarthak Bagchi. The interaction between you and Professor Alam has made this such an interesting session, and it is thanks to you and your questions, I think, which has made it a success. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Evangeline Nonclaw, PhD Research Scholar at the Department of English, University of Hyderabad, to give the vote of thanks. Over to you, Evangeline.
Thank you, Ariba. First of all, it is a great honor to have been chosen to give the vote of thanks on this special occasion. I extend my gratitude to Dr. Afroz Alam, who has shed light on a topic so multifaceted and so layered. I am sure that I speak for everyone present here when I say that it was a true honor to have it is a true honor to hear you speak, sir. I thank you for having taken the time out of your busy schedule to join us and give us this thought-provoking lecture. I would like to also thank Danish Haidar, Professor Muhammad Muazzam Ali, Salma Jahan, K. Sai Amulya, Mohammed Farizuddin, Zeba Tamkanat, Narendra Kumar, and Hania Haidar for their unfailing support. I also thank the participants for their enthusiastic participation and everyone present here. Finally, I would like to make special mention of the President of AIRS, Ariba Ahsnad, for bringing to fruition this second lecture of AIRS. Thank you, and over to you, Ariba.
Thank you, Angeline. I think a special mention should be made of Dr. Sarthak Bagchi because it is with his interaction and his questions that it has become a success. So thank you, Dr. Sarthak Bagchi and Dr. Afroz Alam for making this event a success. I now will close the event with the closing statements. I wish all of you a great day and hope to see all of you in our next lecture by Professor Muhammad Mozam Ali on Nagorno-Karabakh history and implications. Goodbye and have a wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have
Thank
my
you.
number, Ariba.
Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Afrozji. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Probably I may be having your number, or you just give through Ariba. Share with.
I will ask. I think I just passed it to somebody in Ariba's team.
Sure, sir. I'll do that. I'll do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
It was nice seeing you all. Bye-bye.